introducing Mr. Evan Bortnick to you. Evan, or a native New Yorker, I have to say, Evan spent 35 years on the international stages as a tenor soloist. Evan, you now teaches voice and vocal pedagogies, is it right? Pedagogy?
Well said.
Pedagogy, very difficult word for me to pronounce, at the University of Weimar. And in addition, Evan owns the Master Certificate of Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Sounds complicated, it isn't what it is basically, but NLP. It's fine. NLP Master. And Evan also gives seminars on presentation, on voice presentation within Austria and Germany for fellow NLP trainees. Evan, you once asked me, hey Morris, I'm really curious what Toastmasters is all about. What are you doing the whole day there? And you said to me you're a little intrigued, what is this? Speaking in front of a public audience. And I trust you, trust me, you will find out in just half a minute. Yeah? We all will find out more about the educational, what I think Evan does best. Vocal mastery. Please help me welcome Evan.
Very good, very good. Applause, I love applause. My name is Evan Bortnick. I'm originally from New York. I sang opera in New York for 10 years, and when I turned 30, I sort of had a deep longing for Europe. After all, Europe is the home of opera as an art form, and I wanted to come here and breathe the air and drink the wine and stand on the stages of your beautiful theaters and sing. So I got a so-called Festvertrag in Wiesbaden und partieren nach Eignung. Yeah, Eignung, das war ein wichtiges Wort. And I fell in love with the theater, I fell in love with the city, I fell in love with a woman. And 25 years later, I'm still here. Both my parents are teachers, so from an early age it was sort of in my blood to teach voice. And since I'm here, I got 2 certificates in vocal pedagogy. I teach in Weimar. I taught Sprecherziehung at the University at Mainz, which is a lot of fun. And I was also at the same time really curious about, let's say, the neurolinguistic aspects of the voice and of communication. So I got my practitioner and my master and my trainer at in neurolinguistic programming. It's called NLP in English. And now I teach trainers voice techniques, presentation techniques, gestures, and whatnot in Germany and Europe. Okay, enough about me. They recently did a survey in the United States. What are people most afraid of? And number 1 on the list was public speaking. Reden vom Publikum.
That's why we're here.
That's why you're here, right. Number 2 was death. So an average American funeral, most people would rather be in the grave than giving the speech. Now, as ridiculous as that sounds, it has a certain functional logic, because the primary function of the vocal lips is protection. The protection on a biological level means that nothing from the outside flies into the inside that doesn't belong there, like mosquitoes and flies and leaves and beer, whatever it is that could land in the lungs, the system protects it from going in there. On a psychological level, the protection is that nothing from the inside comes to the outside where it doesn't belong. Now we all know what it's like, for example, to have tears in our heart, or to feel sad in a situation where it's not appropriate to cry. We see this in small children very often, where they're first learning to express their emotions, and it basically looks like this. The trembling lower lip, the jaw gets stiff, the neck gets tight. The milder version of that is called a frog in the throat, or ein Frosch im Hals. And this frog is the psychological protection function in action. The second function of the vocal lips and the vocal tract is communication. And nature has worked very hard and long through evolution on us to get us to be the most successful species. Part of the reason of that is because we can communicate so well. And part of that is that the larynx descends. So maybe you've noticed that small children at their mother's breast can drink and swallow and breathe at the same time. Dogs can do that, monkeys can do that, horses can do that. At the end of the first year, the larynx descends so that we can articulate the vowels and consonants necessary for speech, and then we can no longer breathe and swallow at the same time. So I'd like you all to put your finger on your larynx and swallow. You can all feel it's going up, right? Okay. Do it a couple more times just to sense that. Okay, it has to do that so that the epiglottis closes the entrance to the lungs so that the food can go around and into the stomach where it belongs. Okay, so put your fingers there again, and this time, yawn. It's very easy to do on a Tuesday night. Apropos, don't bore your audience. Okay, now you notice probably when my larynx is sunk, my voice sounds very theatrical, a little dramatic, and very sort of affected. So the point is, the larynx has to descend in order for the second function, communication, to override the first function, protection. And this is a very important point. If the larynx descends adequately, then the vocal tract increases so that the partials are strengthened, the Teilturn is verstärkt, and this gives us the ability to project our voice, this gives us all the color in our voice, this gives us a sort of authenticity and genuineness about speaking that we're all after in terms of the voice. One of my trainers was a beautiful, blonde, blue-eyed, innocent, small woman, and she told the story about one night, late at night, she was in a park house in Frankfurt, and she was going to her car, and she saw this one guy, this real macho guy in a really great car, cut off another guy and steal his parking place. Okay, so the first guy gets out of his car with a baseball bat and heads over to the second guy. The second guy gets out of the car, ready for a fight with his fists up, right? Okay, so this woman takes 2 steps forward and goes, "Stop that right now!" And both of them take a step back and go, "He started it." Okay, so in that moment, what she was communicating wasn't merely digital, verbal, "please stop it." In other words, the tone of her voice had an immediate effect on those 2 guys. She communicated in a command voice, authority, and danger. So they've done research that 80% of communication is done through the tone of the voice, of course also gesture, body language, and your face, mimic, which you'll get to later. And this is an important point. I mean, the meaning of the words that we say have a great deal of importance, but even more important is how we say it, the tone of voice that we use. So when we allow our larynx to fall, as I said, it gives you the opportunity to feel the resonance in your chest, to feel the resonance in your head, and to be more effective speakers. This gives us an opportunity to be congruent in our communication. That means that what we're saying with our words is also being said with the tone of voice. I mean, an example of that would be if this girl had taken a step back, ducked her head and said, "Please, please stop it, please, you're frightening me, don't do that, don't do that." She probably would have get beaten up, and the guys would have killed each other, right? I mean, it's very important to notice how the communication is actually being done. What I noticed in training is training the voice goes in 4 phases. I would say, let's see, I can divide this up. Unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence. In other words, first you don't know what you don't know, and then you realize what you don't know. And then as you're learning, you realize what you're learning and what you know, and the goal is to have it be on automatic pilot. Because no one wants to see a speaker standing there thinking about where exactly is my larynx and am I breathing low enough? I mean, it's really boring, right? So in other words, we're looking for a kind of